Hello, all. This is Altbeer, and this is the badge team meeting for May the 16th. And we're going to be talking about this badge I'm showing on the display here, the Cowboys versus Dinosaurs badge. And then we'll talk about some of the other stuff coming up. So, this one seems to be working great. I've soldered up like 9 or 10 of them now. We have several more to do, so we'll have the solder party tomorrow to get the rest of them soldered up for the 3000 Society conference. And I got 30 PCBs in the prototype run. I need 25 for the conference, including mine. So that leaves 5 that can go to the badge team. Now, anyone from the badge team that doesn't get one of those 5, you can get one of the ones from the next run when we do the big run for DEF CON. But yeah, we'll have 5 that you guys can have and play with. Now, right now, the code that's running this is fairly basic. And I know I say fairly basic when it's like 800 lines of code. What I mean is it's not doing a whole lot. It lights up the LEDs, and even though we have 5 different touch areas on the badge, I've really only programmed it to use two of them. The Cowboys, when you press Cowboys, which, there we go, it just lights up the Cowboys faces. And the Dinosaurs, when you press Dinosaurs, it lights up the dinosaur faces. And that's all it's doing, and that was just for me to test out that the touchpads were working, that it could sense them. So we have several things that we need to do. We need to get the rest of the touchpads doing something on a short touch like I just did. And then we can program some things for a long touch, like if you hold down the touch button for like 30 seconds, it'll jump into another mode, like a game mode. And I thought of several little games that we could put on here. I don't want to get too complex because any code changes that we make to this have to be finalized and ready by Sunday. That way I can flash all 25 badges going to the con with the new code before I ship them out on Monday morning because they got to be shipped out to Chicago. So that limits what we can do. Now, one of the little games I was thinking of programming in was just kind of like a high card game where if you press and hold one of the buttons, it'll jump into that game mode, and it will, on a short touch of one of the buttons, just like do like a dice rolling type thing across the top LEDs, and slows down, and it'll finally pick one of the cards. And it'll be a random number generator that just generates one of the 4 numbers, and it'll select one. And then if you're competing against someone else, you both press the button. Whoever has the highest card wins, right? Very simple game, but it'll be a fun little thing people can do with the badges. So that was one that I thought that could be very easy to program in, and can make use of the capacitive touch buttons. And then I was thinking of a more complex thing to make use of the Wi-Fi. We have a Wi-Fi chip in here, and we're not using it at all right now. And that's where I thought of what we did with the Future badge, where we did the long press and it put it in the CTF mode, and the CTF mode would stand up the wireless and stand up like 3 web servers, and you would have to use clues to hack in all the web servers. I was thinking that functionality of having one web server running, and stand up the wireless type thing on a long press. But then for the web server, I had a cool idea of a choose your own adventure game. It can be all text, so we don't have storage issues with images and stuff like that. But basically, the web page can like prompt you. Here's your situation. Choose A or B, right? Or A, B, or C. And when you click on the buttons, you would go to a different web page that's on that web server, and you could go through the whole choose your own adventure that way, and we can make it tied into the Cowboys versus Dinosaur theme. So it could be something to do with playing cards. Um, you have these cards in your hand. Uh, how many cards do you want to discard to draw new to try to complete your straight or something? And you choose, and if you choose wrong, well, then the dinosaur gets mad and eats you or something like that. We can play with the text, and I have a lot of ideas around the text for that. But I think that would be a cool little game, and we could do it on the web server to where it'll stand up a wireless access point in the web server, so you can, like using your phone, connect to that access point with some like not needing any special things. We'll just like tell people what the access point credentials are. That way they can just log in, because this is not a puzzle. It's just a fun little game, right? So they'll know what to use. It'll probably just be Cowboys versus Dinosaurs as the password, right? Log into there, it's going to pop up the web page, and then you can play with the web page to go through the little adventure. So not too complex. The complex part is the Wi-Fi and the web server pieces, and we already wrote all that code for the future badge, so we can reuse a lot of that code. What do you guys think of that idea for a game using the Wi-Fi? I see typing. Cool
Could a
idea.
quick draw game also be possible?
Explain what you mean by a quick draw game.
Just a reaction test of, like, there's a little countdown, and then you
Mm-hmm.
wait a random number of seconds and milliseconds, and then whenever the like point changes, whoever does something faster wins, and you choose if you're a cowboy or a dinosaur. It'd be
Oh,
the same.
no, I got it. That just made me think of an idea when you're talking about like quick draw. So imagine there's a mode, you press it, it puts it in this mode, and the LEDs across the top are just flashing back and forth, right? It's the LED will light up, then two, then three, then four, and then back down to three, two, one, right? Kind of like the carnival game where you have to hit the button when it's at the full five or four or whatever. And if you don't hit it in time, you'll only be at two or three. And so you could do that as a game where you hit one of the capacitive touch buttons to try to get it frozen. And we don't have to use the LEDs at the top. We can make it the big LEDs in the middle. Just have it fill in all five, back to one, five, back to one, and then you hit a button and see it'll freeze there, and you'll see how many that you got. And the goal would be to get all five then. That could be a cool thing and a reaction time thing.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, well, I guess I should show the code since that's what we're talking about. All right, so let me see if I can make this bigger. It always looks too small. View. I always forget where to size the text here. Zoom in. Do one more. Where was that? I just saw it. Yeah, that's good enough. It's big. All right. So basically, the code right now, I'm going to walk through it. That way, if you guys want to pick up um, trying to play with it, you'll know what you're looking at. So we'll start at the top. I'm just including some libraries. I have the Arduino, the Wi-Fi, the NeoPixel, and Spy. I probably don't even need the Spy. I had that in there when I was dealing with the display. It doesn't eat up much, so I just kind of left it in there in case I wanted to hook up display, because The way I worked this out is the pins that I use on the display for the camera badge are pins that we're not using on this badge. So we could like take the top or the back off of the badge, and then the way I'm wiring these up, I don't know if you can see the pins, to make it easier to where they fit flush, I kind of wire these in backwards. Well, that has a dual purpose in that you have this long header pin on the top that once you take the back of the badge off, that's exposed, and you can put jumper cables on there. And so we could actually just put jumper cables and hook it up to a display externally if we wanted to do any kind of diagnostics or anything. So that's why I'm thinking of leaving the SPI in there. So we have the definitions. So we have our two data pins for the NeoPixel data lines. We have the one color LEDs, which are these turned out I didn't use green. I ended up using white for the dinosaur heads. I'll have to correct that. Just because green wasn't bright enough, so I had to use white LEDs for that. But I mean, these are just regular 2-pin LEDs, and so I have them defined here. We have the built-in LED, which is like a regular LED too. Then we have the touch pins for the touch sensors. These are the pins that all the touch sensors are on. We have our NeoPixel parameters, so this defines the NeoPixel strings and that they have 3 pixels in each string, so that, and what data line they're using, that type of thing. This is something that I don't think I'm currently using. It's just a mode tracker that I was going to use to track like what mode the NeoPixels were displaying lights in. I use this in the camera badge, and I kept it here in case I want to use it here. But basically this is what I was going to light up the one NeoPixel that's off to the side, like on the logo, and I was going to light it up the different colors based on this mode. And then pressing a button will tell it what mode it's in. So don't worry about this. I can figure that out later when we start doing different game modes. This is just PWM properties that for those LEDs, it sets what channels it's on and stuff like that. Wireless, all I'm really doing is defining the different wireless status codes. Then here's the capacitive touch stuff. So the threshold is the number that it needs to go below for it to say it's been touched. So I set that at 19. And then the initial value, before I ever read anything off of the actual touch pins, I set that to a number that's higher than this so that it starts out in a mode that's not touched. And then we have various counters that I use for detecting whether it was touched in one iteration or if there's a long touch, meaning it's gone several iterations. And then there's a loop threshold. This is the number of loops that it has to go through, the main loops, with you touching the button for it to say, this is a long press. I see a long press now, so I'm going to do whatever mode is associated with that. Then we have our delay time, which is for the whole main loop. This debug is just if you want to declutter. I throw a lot of things at serial. And so reducing this number reduces the amount of shit that you see. So you can see I use that when I'm printing stuff here. If it's greater than 1, if it's greater than 2. So there's different text that I put in the different debug levels. But this is our setup area. This is run once, basically. It sets up our serial. It sets up, it turns off the Wi-Fi using this function. I do a lot with functions to try to keep these sections pretty clean. We have the PWM setup where I'm actually telling it, here are my channels that I want to set up as PWM channels. And then I'm attaching this LED pin to that channel. That way I can actually pulse them. And for those that don't know, the PWM is instead of making the LED just be on or off, it kind of has that slow on, slow off by pulsing how often it's on or off within a time window. So it makes it look like it's dimmer just by pulsing it on, off, on, off, on, off really quick. So then we initialize the NeoPixels. I set the brightness low. It can go up to 255. This both conserves power and it makes the NeoPixels about the same intensity as the regular LEDs. Otherwise, they would be much brighter than the regular LEDs. I make sure all the LEDs are turned off. That's a function that I have later. And that's the end of our setup. Then we have our main loop. And you guys are following me so far, right? I didn't lose anybody before I jump into main loop. All right. I'm going to say silence means you get it. All right. So yeah, the main loop, the first thing that I do is, make this a little bigger. I read the initial value off of each of the pins, and then I have to dynamically adjust my thresholds. Because if, for example, I had it set for like 19 and the initial value is 21, that was assuming that that's close to what the real values are, and if you touch it, it'll give a number that's below 19 to show a touch. But what if in our assembly, in our design, the actual running value without it being touched is much higher? It's like 75, and when I touch it, it only drops down to like 50. Well, then it's never going to register a touch. So what I have to do is dynamically adjust up, and actually it's it adjusts the threshold up to account for the assembly conditions. So where that threshold was initially set at 19, this is going to adjust that up if it sees that the touch value divided by the threshold is greater than 2, meaning it's more than double what the threshold is. I know I got a problem. And so I'm basically going to make the threshold, I'm going to multiply it by 1.8. And it'll do that as many times as it needs to. Every time it runs through the main loop, it's going to hit this at the top of the loop. And I do that for every pin. So it's just a little dynamic adjustment up of the threshold. That way it'll easily be able to tell if there's a touch or not. So now we have our iteration loop. This is inside of the main loop. I'm going to set an iteration, and I'm going to iterate just between the numbers 0 and 254, right? Standard for loop stuff. And then I'm going to make a position value equal to whatever I is here. And then, I got some serial stuff I'll dump to the screen if I need to. And now I'm going to read the 5 pins at the top. And the first stuff we're doing is the touch stuff, because if the touch stuff is going to bypass other LED stuff, we want it to happen first. So then I do touch pin 1, and this is just printing shit to the screen. Now if I see it's touched, so this is the value is less than the threshold, that means it's touched. It's going to print this to the serial, and then it can do stuff. So I have do stuff once for the iteration, meaning in this 0 to 255, I'm only going to do it one time rather than have it do it 255 times, right? Or if it's outside of this loop, that's where I'm going to do it every time. And one of the things I do every time is I set my the iteration counter to 1, where it starts off at 0, but mainly so I can have this little check. And then I have this one. This is the dinosaur touch. So I run this little function here that lights up the dinosaur heads, and we'll keep them lit for as long as that's touched. Now the else is if I don't see a touch, right? Well, then I'm still going to print a serial, and I'm just going to give you the values because that's helpful for troubleshooting. But then I could do stuff if I wanted to if not touched. In this case, I'm not doing anything. And I do that same method for every one of these 5. So I'm not going to step through every single one, but they're all exactly the same. The Cowboys one does the little Cowboys thing here. And now we get to our default mode. The default mode is for the LEDs, what it's going to do. So after all the touch stuff has been gone through, and let's assume there was no touches there, right? We're going to have our default mode. And what I'm going to do is break this up into 3 groups. Now, the reason I'm breaking up the 0 to 255 into 3 groups is for the color shifting, because we have RGB LEDs. So there's 3 colors, red, green, and blue. And so by doing 3 sections of shifting, I can shift an LED from red to green, then from green to blue, then from blue to red in 3 sections like that. And so that's basically what I'm doing here is I'm saying if the position, which is equal to my iteration number here, if that's less than 85, then I'm doing this section of code here. This is what I'm going to do. This is the 5 NeoPixels that make up the table and what they do, and I pass it its position and that it's iteration 1. And I'll show you these functions in a minute. They're pretty simple. This is the 3K Society, the single NeoPixel, and same thing, position, iteration 1. This is our LEDs that are PWMs. So the LED PWM alternate code is what's causing those to flash the way they are, and I give it the position. And then I have my built-in LED that I blink twice, so it'll just be blinking twice. I can show you, let me show you what that looks like. So I don't know if you could see, but it's just doing 2 quick little blinks. Now I have functions that'll do 1 blink or 3 blinks based on what we want to do. I just did 2 blinks just to test it out. We can have that do whatever we want and have it mean whatever we want. I just haven't determined what that is yet, what we want it to mean. So that's what it does there. Let me go back to the code. Oh, yeah. So then I do the same thing for the second iteration. Color shift, only this time I'm in my second iteration for all of these, right? Now this third one is kind of odd. I had to kind of break it in half. So while I'm doing 3 different groupings because of the RGB, right? My single color LEDs, like the red or the blue ones, I want to PWM them on and then off, and then on and then off. Well, if I only had 3 positions, it would go on, off, on, off, on. You see what I mean? It would stay on a lot longer. It wouldn't look like a nice transition. So I need 4 transitions for that. So what I do is this third set, I do the same thing as I was doing up here for the NeoPixels and the onboard LED. But for these PWM pins, I actually split it up into 3 and 4, where I split that group in half. And so this way it'll do things evenly for 4 iterations for those LEDs. All right, we have lots of debug stuff here, and then the Neo Show just shows whatever we set those to. Then there's our delay timer, which just pauses the loop so you can display the LED colors for a few milliseconds before it shifts to the next color. And then at the end of the iteration loop, so this is the 0 to 255 is running through all that. It gets done with all 255, then it's going to jump down to this end of the mainline code here, where I'm just doing the touch stuff. I'm looking for, is this iteration counter for touch 1? Because that means it was touched this round. If so, I'm going to increase that loop counter. And then I'm going to set the iteration count to 0 again. Otherwise, I'm just going to make the loop count 0. So let's say the loop count got all the way up to 2, but I let go. well, loop count's going to get reset to 0, so that won't have a long touch. So that's how I'm dealing with that. And then we're at the end of the mainline code. The rest of this is all functions that I've written for dealing with all this stuff. So these first few are just for Wi-Fi that we're not really using yet. But then here's like the LED all off function. This has our built-in LED, and for some reason the built-in LED on this thing, it wants to be set to high to turn it off and low to turn it on. It's the oddest thing, but that's the only way I can get it to work. So these PWMs, I set them to 0. The NeoPixels, I set them all to 0 for each pixel. And that's all it does. It turns everything off. And I have the same thing that will turn on or off the PWMs to just make them like normal LEDs. You can just on off them. And then we have, this is that pulse code for the PWMs that's actually making those the red and blue LEDs pulse on and off in an alternating pattern. So basically, I tried just using the full 0 to 255, and it looked odd because these cheap ass LEDs would cut off at such a low thing. It was like they were on really quick and then off the rest of the time, and you didn't get the dimming effect the way I liked it. So what I did was I set a light level, and then based on the position and whatever pass that we're on, whether we're 1, 2, 3, or 4, I set the light level to, which is basically our PWM level, for each of the different LEDs. And so you can see I'm basically taking, these are going from 255, subtracting the light level, and this is just whatever the light level is, and it steps up. So it pulses them on and off for the 4 different passes. That's all that does. So for the NeoPixels, we have a NeoShow function that just does the NeoPixel show for both of the strings. We have our table color shift, and this is where we're taking our NeoPixels, the 5 that make up the table, and we're shifting them either red to green, or green to blue, or blue to red, and based on the pass that changes, and that's how they do the color shift all around all 5 the way they do. Now one thing I'll note, come back up to the top of this one, so this this alternate code, you'll see if I have T1 or T5, that's the cowboy or the dinosaur pressed, this is going to do nothing. It's going to skip everything here because I'm setting the pass to be 0. And same thing with the NeoPixel code. When we get down there, that's the first thing I check. If either of those two is pressed, I'm setting this to 0. That way he does nothing. And the reason for that is I don't want it to be running this code and then also updating the touch code to light up the cowboys or light up the dinosaurs. They conflict with each other. So I need to make sure this one's off if that is on. And then this is the color shifting code for the 3000 Society. And you can see it's pretty much straight math. I'm taking that position, and for like, this is my NeoPixel string number. So this is the actual third pixel because it goes 0, 1, 2. That is on the second string. And then this is our red value and our green value and our blue value. So it starts off where red is counting up, right? So that's why it's going red 0 to 255. And blue is counting down. So it's going 255 to 0. So then we have different things to just set them straight colors. Here's my touched cowboy code and the touched dinosaur code. It just sets which pixels I'm going to do. Here's the built-in LED on and off. Blink once, blink twice. That's it. That's all that's here. So questions on that before I do a quick review of what I want to do with the Wi-Fi code. All right, no questions, we'll take a look at the Wi-Fi code real quick. So this is on the future badge. So the future badge, the way we did the wireless was as part of a CTF. So we built it into an Arduino library. And in the source, we had this header that had just the basic layout of what LEDs it was going to use and what services it needed. And then we had the CPP file that actually did a lot of the setup and called a lot of the other files. So you can see here's the CTF main. It says welcome to the CTF. It sets up all of the stuff for the MAC address for the Wi-Fi. It grabs that, and then the SSID was future badge plus that MAC address. That way it wouldn't conflict with other badges. It set it up into the different Wi-Fi modes. It dumped stuff to the screen. It has all this code to do that. Here's where it configured. Looks like it had 4 different web servers. We're only going to need one, so this will be simpler. And there's the web server start. And then for each of the web servers, it's basically a header file. So there's like a web common file that has some basic stuff, like your style sheets and stuff. And then it's the actual raw literal for the HTML. Now what we did for images was, this is an image. We built in a lot of images this way. For what I'm thinking we want to do, it'll be text-only pages. We won't need images because this made the files very big, and we had storage issues there. But yeah, basically we just set it up as a library with the library properties, and then in the INO file, you just include it as a library. So we can do that for this badge by just building a library in our libraries section that's like Cowboys versus Dinosaur library or whatever. And we can cut and paste a lot of that stuff that's from the future badge right into there because the code's already written and it works. And so we shouldn't have any trouble with it. If anything, we're going to strip out a lot of crap we're not using and streamline it just for this simple game. So I'm hoping, because I'm probably not going to have time to look at code again until Sunday. So I'm hoping that one of you can maybe pick up and play with the code and try getting the Wi-Fi piece working. And those of you that are coming over tomorrow to do the solder party, you will have a physical badge in your hand to test with, so it might be a good thing to play with on Saturday or Sunday if you get a chance. And then I have text in my head for the game, the Choose Your Own Adventure game, that I will throw down into HTML code that we can include in headers. But yeah, I don't know who has time or wants to take on doing the Wi-Fi piece to this, or who wants to just work on some of the other games we talked about. You can see how I did the LED modes for the functions to do different things. We could set it up to where you can use one of the other 3 buttons. I can show you how to do the long touch. In fact, I can show you that here. So this is the future badge code, and I'm just looking for where it would jump into the CTF mode. Yeah, there it is. So this is if the loop count exceeds the loop count threshold, then you can jump into another mode just within the main, right? You can do whatever. In this case, I'm doing stuff with the LEDs, and then finally at the very end, I call the CTF main, which is that code that we just reviewed in the function. That's all it takes to do that long press, is something like this at the bottom of the main line, just before it resets the loop counters. We can say, okay, Was there a long press? Yes. All right, now I'm going to do this code instead. And it kind of bypasses the main line while it's in here. So yeah, we can do something like that. I guess it's up to you guys. I'm talking to the badge team on our Discord. So who wants to take over playing with some code? Don't everyone volunteer at once? You guys can still hear me, right? All right. Well, if nobody has time, that's cool. It's something I'll see if I have time to do, and if I need to, I can, after I ship the badges to the con, I can work on the code the week before I go to con, and then just reflash them when I get to Chicago, because there's only 25, and it only takes about a minute or so to flash each badge.
Yeah, I mean, let's solder them. I'll be there tomorrow to solder,
Yeah.
so I think we can get them all cranked out. I feel pretty confident we
Yeah.
can get them all cranked out pretty quick, and
Mm-hmm.
then I can definitely take a look at some code. I'm out all day Saturday, but
Okay.
Sunday I'll be around, so I can take a look at some of it too.
Cool. Yeah, and like I said, I have functional code on here. It's just not doing much. I wanted to try to
Yeah,
add some games. So if we don't get more games, oh well, we'll work on that for the DEF CON version of the badge. But if we can get some games on there quickly and it's not too much effort, it's just cooler to take to the con.
yeah. I think if we get everything built quickly tomorrow, then that relieves a little pressure too to say,
Yeah.
okay, assembling whatever is done, and then let's
Right.
just try cranking out some fun stuff for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, I have like 9 or 10 done. I'll probably do a couple of more tomorrow during the day before you guys show up. So yeah, there won't be many left. I'm assuming that we'll only need about maybe 14 or so for the con. Plus, if you guys wanted to solder your own, um, then you'd have soldered up badge to take home. So
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the text game we could crank out pretty quick because, like you're saying, the code's all there.
right.
It's just cleaning it up, making a library, and slapping the stuff in it, right?
Exactly. That's why that was a quick win. We can just reuse the code that we already wrote for the other badge and tweak it a little for our badge. So, and I might have time to deal with that on Sunday. So, but yeah, once we get past the the big crunch of the solder, that's that's the big thing, is making sure they're all soldered up for me to ship out on Monday, no matter what the state of the code is. And the soldering should go pretty quick, because one thing I did do um, was all of the little dev boards that come unsoldered, that you have to solder the header pins onto them. I soldered up all 30 of these, so we have all of those are ready to go. So that's a little bit of soldering taken off the plate. Um, and they've all been preloaded with code too, so it'll make it easier to test. That way, once you get it all soldered up, being that the LiPo batteries come with at least a half charge on them, you should be able to just flip the switch and see the lights come on and see if they're all working or if any of them need to be retouched or whatever. So yeah, I think the soldering will go pretty quick. Cool. Well, I think that's about it for Cowboys versus Dinosaurs. I wanted to switch gears and talk about Godzilla Versus. Um, so let's see, the Godzilla Versus badge. See if I can open up that graphic that I did, that I shared with you guys. Because I'm still going over in my head how I want this thing to look, but I think doing two different shape badges instead of two that are identical like this one was could have a cool effect to it. So let's see, where are you, Godzilla? Oh yeah, it's after F, G. There we go. Art. All right. Let me open up Illustrator. switch to display. And Illustrator's taking its time. Come on, you bloatware. It's thinking about it. Okay. Come on, drag to the other screen. Oh yeah. All right. So basically, this is the art that I worked up. Not like the full art of the badge, just kind of like to give me a general idea of where I want the edge cuts to be. And so where we were talking about just having Godzilla fighting different monsters, I had the idea for the shape of the badge being Godzilla's head, right? So if I get rid of all of this, get rid of all these, where's the other picture? There it is. Basically, we would have, this is one PCB that is just Godzilla's head as an outline with an open mouth, right? And it'll have art on it, but that's the shape. That would be another PCB, and it wouldn't be different colors. It's all going to be the same color. I just did the different colors so that you can see how they layer on top of each other. And then to put both of those together with kind of like Godzilla's face as an example, what you have is this ridge line like above the bridge of his nose and going over the eyebrows. That's kind of the dividing line between the front PCB and the back PCB. So this back PCB will still have art on it that'll be visible from the front of the badge, but it's mainly like the back of Godzilla's head with its little spike on the head to differentiate him from any other lizard. And then like his neck area that comes out when he's like roaring, that's on the back PCB, but it's not on the front. So the front is basically the front of his face. Then within the center part here, that's where we kind of talked about doing Godzilla, the artwork that we talked about, right? Where it's a Godzilla within Godzilla's mouth, basically, that's going to fight whatever we add on. But this back PCB sticking out like this will allow us to put the SAO connector there and have the SAO connect. As long as it meets this curve, it'll be flush with this PCB, or close to flush, to where it'll look flush. And then I think, Hash, you had mentioned maybe doing a cutout around the mouth. And I think that's a great idea because we can actually do like this area here in front of Godzilla. Maybe he'll have fire breathing out of his mouth, but there'll be small cutouts around the teeth that will enhance the idea of this is an open mouth, right? It won't be a full cutout because we'll have the Godzilla here and we'll have maybe the fire and pieces of buildings here, but we'll have these chunks of teeth with like going around the building. That'll be a cutout there, and maybe on the back of him that'll be a cutout around his little fins here. That could look really cool. What do you guys think of that idea for the badge shape?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty sweet 3D
I like it.
looking badge.
Yep. Yeah, and then the add-on, this is just one example of a shape. They can be all different shapes, as long as they all have this common curve to them, so where they'll fit flush. So maybe we'll, instead of this squarey thing, that'll be wings of something or whatever. You know what I mean? So this outside piece is what's changeable shape-wise, and we'll probably cut to the shape of whatever the monster is. And then it'll have that smooth inside line to go across his face like that.
And people are building these badges, or we're building these badges?
A little both. We'll do some fully assembled, but yeah, I'd say the majority are going to be kits.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll keep it fairly simplistic, through-hole components and whatnot. That way people can easily build them. Yeah, the only thing that worries me about this badge is going to be big. So it, I was doing some size measurements um, to do it the same way we did the Cowboys versus Dinosaurs, to where we put most of the components on the front of the face, like the backside of the front PCB, especially with cutouts and the fact that it's a smaller PCB, it's going to have to be a larger PCB, which makes the whole badge larger. Um, so yeah, when I was doing some measurements, like if you look at this one, I'll get my ruler out here. This is basically 4.5 wide by 4.25. Is it 4.5 or 4? It's like 4.75 inches wide, and it's 4.25 inch tall. I think for the Godzilla badge, we're going to be looking at more like a 5.5 wide, and maybe a 6 or 6.5 tall. It's not a huge deal, and I've done bigger badges, but what that means is instead of doing the single PCB with the break aparts, it's probably going to be easier and cheaper just to do multiple PCBs as individual runs of the front and the back. And then we'll have to have another run for the SAOs as well. So this one is not going to be one that I'm going to try to do the mouse bites and make it like a single PCB. I think with it needing to be larger and us wanting to easily run them, I think it'll cost us time and money to try to make a big one. Because when you get to sizes like that, the board house doesn't like you panelizing them yourself. They will penalize you financially to make sure that you know they don't like that. The small stuff, I don't think they care too much. But when I looked at prices, because I forget which badge I was looking at doing that for, that had a couple of PCBs. Maybe it was the Future badge, where the initial iteration of the badge was much larger. And when I looked at doing it as a single PCB with mouse bites, just pricing it out on the Gerber tool on one of the sites, it was like 30% more expensive than if I just ran the two separate PCBs as two separate orders. So yeah, there's something to be said for keeping it simple, and that will simplify it by just doing it as separate PCBs, and not having to worry about, do they connect up right? Where am I going to make the line to connect the boards right? So yeah, that I think is the consideration that I took away from that. But I think this is doable, and it'll be a larger badge, which some people like that, some people don't like that. But I think that's the best way to get the art that we want to do through. And to be honest, these are art badges. These are not complex technical badges. These are going to be displaying artwork, right? And if we want to do cutouts in the mouth and around Godzilla and still be able to see the Godzilla in the mouth with some detail, it's got to be bigger than this Cowboys badge. It just has to be. So I think that's the size that we're looking for is, I'd say about 20 to 30% larger than the Cowboys versus Dinosaur.
Yeah, I mean, it's a T-Rex. I think it should be large, you know?
Yeah. Now you got Rex thinking he's Godzilla. Yeah, I think this is doable, and what I'm gonna do is at least get some of the edge cuts and some of the basic foundational art, the kind of art that drives where things go on this, like where the cutouts go and stuff like that. I'll get some of that stuff done next week. After we ship off the Cowboys badges, I'll have a couple of days before I go to the con in Chicago that I can work on some art and finalize this. This was like a good tester just to give me a layout. but I want to get actual edge cuts for the badges with some basic art laying out where all the cutouts are going to go on those edge cuts. And then we can update that, the Indiegogo with these details. Because I think that's going to be important before we launch the campaign, is that we show not only do we have this badge is pretty much done, but this other badge that's part of the deal that's being offered is in progress and has some serious progress to it. And yeah, I think if we look at the timing of this, right, we really have to get the Godzilla badge ready for a first prototype run of the PCB, probably like first week of June, because it takes like a week to get your prototype boards in. We'll probably have to test them, maybe do a second run if there's problems. And if you look at our timing of our campaign, the Indiegogo campaign is scheduled to end like mid-June, right? And we have to start building kits and packaging those kits for the Hacker Warehouse starting around mid-June, so that I think my deadline for sending them the badges is like the last week of June. So basically, we have to have PCBs, components, code, everything done for both badges by the end of June if we're going to ship product to Hacker Warehouse to be able to sell at DEF CON for us. So that's kind of the time crunch. Plus the Indiegogo, if that ends mid-June, we're probably going to want to start packaging up and shipping out those products either end of June or early July. That way people have them in time to build them at home before they go to DEF CON. Because remember, we're going to be doing shipping with the Indiegogo. So we have to have time to also package up and ship these things. So yeah, we have a lot of things coming up in the next month or so that are going to hit hard. So, and I mean, it's not the end of the world if we don't meet these dates. With Hacker Warehouse, let's say we don't meet the date for the Godzilla badge. We can send them the Cowboys badge because we know that one's done. And we'll just say, we're sorry, this other badge didn't work out. We'll just be doing one this year. With the Indiegogo, if we can't get it until later in July shipped out to people, as long as we get it like a week before the con, because a lot of people leave for like Black Hat, so we want to make sure we get it to people by the end of July. That way it's in their hands before they leave for Vegas if they're doing other cons or things. So yeah, there's some play there in the schedule, but really it's an aggressive timeline, and we're got a lot of work to do. So yeah, and yeah, I really appreciate you guys coming over tomorrow to help solder these cowboy badges, because that's the type of teamwork we're going to need to make these other things happen too.
Yeah, I really feel like the packaging and assembling stuff. I have a talk I'm giving June 1st, but after that I'm kind of fairly free. So I think there's like a couple full days we can pull and just get that stuff done. Like once it comes in, get things built or packaged up and stuff like that, and then crank out the code. I feel fairly solid about that kind of work, because that's just sit down and crank it out. Like assembly stuff. And the code stuff, even still, I think we can figure that out. So I think we can hit it. I think it's aggressive, but I feel like we can get it done.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of the components I've already ordered. Some I'm ordering this coming week. So I think the longer pole in the tent when components are involved is the LiPo batteries, and to spread those orders out, I've been ordering them 50 at a time, and I think I have a total of like 300 on order now, so probably another 150, 200 to order, and that's in addition to the 70 or 80 that I had at home already. So that's the type of thing I'm getting orders in now. The ESP boards, I think I got after this run, I probably have maybe 50 left in that bag, and then I have another 100 of those that should be arriving in a week or so, and I'll order another couple hundred next week. So I'll start getting all the components in to where once we have PCBs and components, it should just be easy to build. And yeah, you guys have seen how I put together the badges, right? I have the everything is in a bag. I have bags for everything, even for what we're going to solder tomorrow, right? I built little bags with all the components. That way everything is here that you need. So yeah, that's what I do. I have all the bags on order that we need. Some of them have come in. So I have nice holographic bags for the outside and smaller anti-static bags for inside. I got these little padded bags for the assembled badges. Yeah, just show you how one can fit inside there. It's cool to do it while it's lit. So it's perfect fit for the Cowboys badge. I don't know if that size will work for Godzilla, so I may have to order a bigger size for the Godzilla badge. But when we do the fully assembled, then they have a nice padded bag that they're in. So yeah, all of that stuff, I'm ordering it now. I'm not waiting for the Indiegogo funds. I figure I can pay off the credit cards later. But we got to get the stuff in hand, because if it's not in hand and we're waiting on it, that's a bad place to be, especially if it's something that has to come from China.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice you have the flexibility to be able to do that, because for sure having that stuff already in hand reduces a lot of the stress.
Yeah. Yeah, and then it's just a matter of making sure we can get the designs done and the code done to do what we wanted to do. So, yeah, I think we're in a good spot. All right, well, with that, I think that was all I had for tonight. Did you guys have any questions?
Just tomorrow's still starting at 3, if anyone's able to swing by then. I'm going to try to get over around that time if that's when it starts, unless something at the house stops me. But I'll be over sometime between like 3 and 5 for sure.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I figured. That was the earliest I could start because of work. But yeah, if you can't come at 3, you can come later. We're going to go for a while until all the soldering is done. So yeah, whenever you can make it out. And the address, I posted that in Discord. So if you need to know the address, scroll back in the Discord or ping me and I can shoot it to you. And I love a good solder party.
I do too. It's like LineCon, but at your house.
Yeah. Probably be less drinking. They're not saying there won't be drinking, but it won't be like LineCon drinking. Cool. Can we invite Ed? Who's Ed? Oh, V and Ed, right? Yeah, I mean, if they want to come, the more the merrier.
Oh, did you get a chance to show off the lanyards?
Oh no, I don't think I did. Oh yeah.
I don't see them in the Discord pictures either.
Alright, so yeah, lanyards are pretty simple. I didn't do custom art for them. I just chose one of the fonts on their site, and it just says 3000 Society, Cowboys vs. Dinosaurs. It's in a nice gold color, so it matches the badge. It has brass fittings, the little lobster claw things that I like. It has an adjuster. So yeah, they're pretty nice. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but I used brass standoffs. I know we had talked about the plastic ones, and if there was electronics on the back PCB or even close to the holes on the front, the plastic ones might have been a better choice, but we kept all the electronics away from those holes, and there's no electronics on the back, so I figured for this badge being the gold color of it and the gold inlay copper, the brass just looked so much better. I had to go with that for these. So
Yeah, that's cool. That's a nice touch.
yeah, cool. All right. Well, if that is it, then I am gonna stop the stream and tell everyone that's watching on the stream to keep watching us because there's more updates coming. I know next Thursday night, I'll probably be in Chicago, but I'm still going to see if I can do a quick stream from there, just an update from the 3000 Society Con, because it technically kicks off Friday, but I'll be flying into that hotel Thursday night. But yeah, we'll have more badge news to come. So thank you for watching.